has it feel to lose a husband who earns $200,000 a year?
My sister grinned at me as she said this. But it was supposed to be a celebration for the birth of my child, but she didn't care. Not bringing even a gift, she shamelessly confessed her affair with my husband.
Let's be clear, he is head over heels for me. You can see that, and
You've always been so clumsy and poor, utterly lacking in any feminine charm. It's really sad that you were married to him all this time. Do you think you can wreck someone's family and get away with it for free? I glared at her, and even that seemed to amuse her. First, a wife who's been dumped is really pathetic, isn't she? That's all you can do, make bitter excuses. Have you looked at your face in the mirror? The meanness is plastered all over your expression. What kind of person are you?
This is my big life, Tara. I can spend money however I want now, and I'll pay whatever alimony is needed for the affair. Saying this, my sister turned to my husband, who was sitting with us. He started to tremble.
As soon as our eyes met, he suddenly prostrated himself.
I'm sorry.
His voice, ringing out all of a sudden, was most surprising to my sister.
Oh, what?
Seizing the opportunity, I reached into my pocket for something I had hidden there. At her appointment, when I attached it to the front of my shirt, my sister's face turned pale in an instant. My name is Beth. I'm children see, I'm a so-called working mom, juggling both housewife. I've been married to my husband Dave for over 5 years. But whether these 5 years have been long or short, personally, I feel it's been quite a long journey. The reason is, we had trouble conceiving a child. Since the beginning of our marriage, we both wanted children. At that time, we were both 31 years old. But it was still a reasonable age for childbearing. But building a warm, family-filled home had always been one of my dreams. A common wish. However, after we started our married life, I just couldn't seem to get pregnant. We went to the doctor and both of us got checked out, but there was nothing unusual. Eventually, you'll get pregnant. The doctor optimistically predicted, but contrary to that, we spent a long time trying to conceive. And then, after 5 years, when I finally got pregnant, the joy my husband and I felt was beyond words. Finally, a baby was coming to us. Rubbing my belly, we repeatedly thanked God for this blessing. At that time, I was working full-time, but I gradually started to reduce my workload, preparing for maternity leave. My usual work was hectic, and though I felt a pang of sadness as tasks slipped through my fingers, what mattered most to me was the baby in my belly. Fortunately, our combined household income was quite substantial, and we had managed to save enough. My husband said, "I'll work even harder from now on," and true to his word, he put 20 more effort into his work. I was more worried about him not overdoing it. Not once I reached a stable period in my pregnancy. I took a leave of absence from work 1 month before my due date, preparing for a hometown return for childbirth. Especially my husband, who's a bit of a homebody, was reluctant about me leaving home, but he agreed when I explained it was all for our child. "I'll miss you, Beth." affliction on one hand. I found my husband's attitude a bit unreliable, but it was also endearing, and I vowed to fulfill my role as a pregnant woman for his sake too. Then, when I crossed the threshold of my parents' home after a long time, there was my sister, Yui, at our parents' house. I was surprised by her sudden appearance. That's because I hadn't seen my sister in almost 10 years. Not just her face. I didn't even know if my sister was alive. This was the same for our parents. Yui had left home almost like an elopement 10 years ago and hadn't returned. Her partner was an unemployed man, a former host. Back then, Yui seemed really smitten with him. It's investing all the money she had earned and even dipping into our parents' savings, which led to them disowning her. About 10 years have passed since then. Got even a yearly update. I had no way of telling her about my marriage, let alone my pregnancy. And now, Yui suddenly appeared back home, leaving me surprised and with an uneasy feeling. We were never close as sisters, that's one thing. And now seeing my sister even more roughened by the past 10 years, I couldn't help but feel a sense of revulsion.
Was sister ain't pregnant, but yeah. Such a big valley.
I'm almost at full term. More importantly, what have you been doing all these years? You ran away from home like an elopement, and it's been 10 years. You never once contacted us.
Oh, so I was disowned, right? Mom and Dad yelled at me, I will never show your face again. I couldn't come back.
That's because you tampered with the family's money.
I know. I said I do pay it, and I did.
That's why Mom and Dad let me stay at home again. Maybe the youngest daughter is always the favorite, huh?
Patient with the man you were dating.
I broke up with him ages ago. That penniless guy after he ate through my savings. And he even racked up debts and then cheated on me with another woman.
His face as she said this was fiercely intense, her eyes glittering dangerously. It wasn't the face of the sister I knew. She'd always been troublesome, but seeing her again after so long, her expression was cloaked in a worn-out negative aura. Feeling intimidated, I couldn't say anything more.
Well, all that's in the past now. Let's let bygones be bygones and get along as sisters. I'm going to be living here in this house from now.
Together.
I'm sister.
And so began my life back at my parents' home. But to be honest, all I felt was stress. Of course, the cause was my sister Yui's presence. She had promised to get along, but that promise was never kept. Yui, following her own whims, showed no regard for the family's daily life. Especially being pregnant. I wished she would be more considerate. But she made noise late into the night and rarely got up early in the morning. She was the epitome of a lazy daughter, living off our parents, everything handed to her. Yet, she didn't show a shred of remorse. Her argument boiled down to one point.
I work, you know. It's not like you big, sis.
Despite her laziness, Yui did have a temp job, and she went to work at fixed hours during the day. There was also the promise she made to our parents to repay the money. This seemed to have given her the impression that she was contributing financially to the house, which in turn led to her taking jabs at me especially since I was on leave from my job.
Just because you're pregnant, you act like you're unemployed, doing nothing but eating, sleeping, and wandering around.
What I'm doing is necessary for the baby in my belly. This is the most crucial time.
Yeah. I get women are so great, huh? Big sis, you're always finding ways to cheat the system. And that's...
Yui snorted disdainfully and glared at my pregnant belly. It seemed she was irritated that our parents were more attentive to me. At one point, my worried mother suggested, maybe you should explain to UI that you're on leave from work, not unemployed. If she understands that you have a job too, maybe her attitude will change. It's okay. Mom, it doesn't matter what UI thinks of me. It's just going to complicate things more. I just want to focus on the childbirth. I'm just worried she might cause some trouble. I understood what my mother was saying, but I didn't want to wear myself out anymore over my sister's issues. The baby's birth was almost here. I always wanted to be a strong mother, no matter the situation. For that, I couldn't afford to be bothered by UI's antics. One day, a week before my due date, my husband came to visit me at my parents' house to check on me. My husband, clearly not comfortable in someone else's family home, was nervous throughout his visit. But he was sharply dressed in a suit. I couldn't help but smile inwardly at my husband's attempt to look his best. Nice to meet you. I'm Yui, your sister. Yui approached my husband with a flirty tone, all dolled up. She usually didn't wear such heavy makeup when going to work. Now, she was fully made up and wearing a dress with a low-cut neckline. Seeing my husband visibly unsettled, I quickly intervened. Yui, aren't you supposed to be at work? My husband won't be staying long either. What? I finally get to meet my brother-in-law, and you want to cut it short. Your husband is such a distinguished man, isn't he? He looks so sharp in that suit, and he seems so kind. Quite a contrast to my ex-boyfriend. Don't bring up weird stories here, please. Avril, and your husband is a big earner, right? I heard he's a lawyer. I've always admired intelligent people. My husband, faced with her sparkling gaze, didn't seem entirely displeased. He was blatantly extending his gaze, even staring at UI's exposed cleavage. I was so exasperated. I smacked my husband hard on his backside. Then I sent him home straight away. If he just came to see my face, his business here was done. Well then, I'm off to work too. I said, leaving the house as if following my husband. I felt a twinge of worry as my sister left, but I couldn't go after her. More than anything, I was feeling completely drained. I later heard the story from my mother. Apparently, she had privately admonished UI. Scolding her sister for being unemployed was not acceptable. After that, my mother seemed to have inadvertently let slip details about our household income and the nature of our jobs. Though she tried to be vague, how Yui interpreted it was unclear. At the very least, it seemed certain that my husband appeared to Yui as a man of means. In hindsight, I should have been more cautious at that time. That's if I had been more cautious, then maybe what followed wouldn't have led to anyone getting hurt. The week passed, and I finally went into labor. After enduring a day and night of pain, when it was over, I was left with an indescribable happiness. Our long-awaited baby was a bit small at 2,500 grams, but to me, he shone brighter than any gem. My only concern was that my husband couldn't make it in time for the birth. We had planned all along for him to be there, discussing it well in advance. That's why I wanted my husband to witness the moment of birth, to imprint it in his memory. But he arrived at the hospital only an hour after the baby was born. When I asked him, "Why are you late?" he just replied tersely, "I got held up with work." The fact that UI showed up not even 5 minutes after him made me suspect something. Could it be these two? After completing the monumental task of giving birth, I realized I was faced with yet another problem that needed to be resolved. In the days that followed, I worked tirelessly like a demon, all while carefully hiding my resentment. After the postpartum period, we decided to hold a celebration for the birth of our child at my parents' home. Of course, my husband attended, along with his parents and a host of relatives. Yui also nonchalantly joined the gathering. That day, she was dressed up extravagantly, almost overshadowing who the celebration was for. Moreover, she was sticking close to my husband, not leaving his side. I didn't miss the meaningful glances exchanged between the two. As the party was in full swing, I stood up and raised my voice. The red-faced attendees, having enjoyed their drinks, all turned to look at me, and this is a joyous occasion, but there is something important I need to announce. As of today, I am divorcing my husband, Dave. The faces of the relatives showed utter shock, their mouths agape, as only my parents, who had been briefed beforehand, looked solemnly at my husband's face. My husband looked completely clueless about what was being said. I continued with more detailed information. Embarrassingly enough, while I was struggling with pregnancy and childbirth, my husband was repeatedly unfaithful. I hired a private investigator and obtained evidence of his infidelity. I will show everyone here the photos of my husband entering a hotel with another woman, kissing her on the street late at night. And to reveal the full truth, the other woman in these affairs is none other than my own sister, UI. But with her name mentioned, everyone's gaze turned to UI. Yui, who was clinging close to my husband, by that alone, was as good as admitting her guilt. In fact, without any sign of shame. Yui just laughed. Ahaha. Big sis, you're quite bold, aren't you? To air your own shame in front of all the relatives. I've been cuckolded right after giving birth. That's a shame that will last for generations, right?
I did it to make you realize, to show you the betrayals you've committed.
A betrayal. That's such an ugly word. I just fell in love with Dave. When there's love, no one can object, right?
How can you even say that? You stole my husband, didn't you, even while I was giving birth?
I'll never forget the two of you visiting my hospital room together.
Spot on. I admit it because I feel sorry for you, yes, while you were giving birth. Or you were making love in a nearby hotel. Yeah, sorry about that. Us making love. Boy, you're delivering a child.
Yui, what kind of person are you?
Heck, what? I'm just admitting it like you wanted. Oops, you were abandoned, big sis, by a successful husband earning $200,000 a year.
With triumphant laugh. Yui took a big gulp of her beer. The relatives around us were speechless with astonishment. Unfazed by the atmosphere, Yui went on.
Honestly, I couldn't stand that someone like Big Sis, plain Jane, was married to a high earner.
On the other hand, I'm beautiful and still young. It's natural for Dave to be attracted to me. He even said in bed that he's lost confidence in his life with his wife.
I don't want to hear about your affair.
How? This is that, sour grapes I hear, Big Sis?
You're in for a tough time, raising a baby alone as a single mother. Really, I feel sorry for the child. Without a father just because of the mother's selfishness.
Be prepared. UI. I plan to demand a substantial amount in damages from both you and my husband. I'll be ruthless. I'll make sure you both face the consequences legally.
I'll go ahead. As for whatever compensation you want, I have a husband who earns $200,000 a year now. So, entry up for action, $200,000? Maybe if you gobble on the ground and beg, please give me money. I might consider giving you a little extra. A's.
As UI called my husband with a flirtatious voice, he sat next to her, his face ashen, completely frozen. His hands were trembling visibly. UI, looking puzzled, called out, "Dave," but he showed no response. Then, as our eyes met, he suddenly knelt down in a formal posture. Bowing his head, he shouted, "I'm sorry."
He said rinse in the cocktail. Most shocked at this moment was UI Wasm up in confidently, confronting me just seconds before.
What's going on? Dave? Why are you suddenly prostrating yourself like this?
I have no other choice. All I can do is apologize.
Come on, pull yourself together. He said you'd handle it if your wife took legal action.
I'm a lawyer. I can handle any lawsuit. That's why I trusted you and let myself rely on you.
Husband, it's all a lie. These empty words. I was only intending to have a bit of fun with you. Yeah, so...
All of it just lies?
As UI stood there frozen, I decided to reveal my trump card. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a badge. I attached the badge to my chest, making sure everyone could see it. The badge was engraved with the design of a sunflower, symbolizing freedom, and a pair of scales representing equality.
That badge, it's...
Even UI seemed to understand what it signified.
Yes, this badge is only worn by those permitted to practice law. It symbolizes justice and equality under the law.
But you're supposed to be unemployed.
I don't know where you got the idea that I was unemployed, but as you can see, I'm a lawyer currently on leave.
Once childcare settles down, I fully intend to return to work. A $200,000 salary was my income before I took leave. What did my husband tell you? That he was a high-earning lawyer? Just flattery to get what he wanted from you? In reality, he's just a paralegal, an office worker at a law firm. My husband and I met at work. Even then, our marriage was talked about due to the income and status difference. But I've always tried to avoid judging someone based on their income or position.
Please, Albert Bass, forgive me. It was just a moment of weakness. After you went to your parents' house, I was lonely and I just...
But of all people, you chose my sister for your affair.
Flattered by being called a lawyer, you must have enjoyed it. You've had your fun, so it's only fair you face the consequences. We're getting a divorce, and I'll make sure to get a substantial settlement. You know I'm a lawyer specializing in divorce cases, don't you? So, Yui, that's the situation. Feel free to marry him or keep him as your dependent, as you like. I'm no longer interested, of course, after paying me the damages you owe.
Sister, please forgive me. I'm your only sister. I don't want this lying man either.
Not the compensation. I'm already burdened with debt from my previous boyfriend.
The lawsuit has already been filed in court. You better be prepared.
That's all. I concluded and left the room. I had no interest in what the relatives would say to my husband and sister afterward. And then, after some time had passed, I officially finalized the divorce with my husband. He was tearful and pleading until the end, but when I hinted at increasing the damages, he finally, crying, signed the divorce papers. He was well aware of my capabilities as a skilled lawyer. If it had gone to court, I would have prevailed. Burdened with a hefty alimony, he seems to be struggling quite a bit now. Of course, he was fired from the law firm. A man who cheats during his wife's childbirth is naturally unwelcome in any law firm. I hope he reflects on his actions and leads an honest life from now on. As for my sister Yui, she too was kicked out of the house and is now wandering homeless. As I've heard, she already broken up with my ex-husband Dave. There were numerous missed calls from her on my smartphone, so I had some idea of her situation. Yui claimed I was deceived. I'm the victim, feeling a bit sorry for her. I referred her to a law firm. If her case is legitimate, surely a competent lawyer will be willing to help her. I never thought Yui would be able to afford the attorney fees. Meanwhile, I returned to work, handling my responsibilities as before. When I get home, I care for my beloved daughter. With my parents' help, my life is going smoothly. We're planning to celebrate my daughter's first traditional meal at an upscale restaurant, discussing it with my parents. Thanks to the alimony from my ex-husband and sister, we can afford something special. I'm savoring every moment of my daughter's growth.